How does Notre Dame beat Georgia in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff? It's going to be a big question as we head into these games, and it's going to be fun to see what Notre Dame has in store for Georgia. In the past, we've seen this Notre Dame team compete for in the playoff, but it never felt like they were actually in it, and the games quickly went the other direction for the most part. And this feels like a different team. This team feels like it's playing with a ton of confidence. It feels like even though the offense appears to be semi one dimensional, you feel like you've got the right team to make a run. Marcus Freeman has done a really good job on both sides of the ball, and it's going to be fun to see what Notre Dame can do to stun the Georgia Bulldogs. They did a really good job against Indiana. Yeah, it was 27-17, but that game was never really in question. Maybe you had a little bit of a sweat at the end when Indiana was getting an onside kick and scoring again, but you felt pretty good about what Notre Dame did all game. But the biggest thing for them is, can you continue that confidence? The second half of the season has been a completely different one than the first half for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Obviously, the Northern Illinois loss is what people are going to point to. This is a much different team than that team. That is not a team that we see anymore, and they're hoping to continue that against the Georgia Bulldogs. If they can, you feel pretty good about what they can do in terms of winning a national championship, but this one is going to be tough. Notre Dame's offense is really good. The defense is playing. I think the best thing about Notre Dame's defense is there's not really one player that they rely on too much over the rest of the group. They feel like they're in a good position to win football games because they play as the unit, they play together, and that's really exciting if you're a Notre Dame fan. The keys for Notre Dame starts with Riley Leonard. And I think that, when I talked about how Georgia beats Notre Dame, it's taking away the run game. And that's very obvious, but you have to talk about it. Riley Leonard's ability to move the ball through the air is going to be relied upon. Notre Dame's offensive line is very good, but this is a Georgia defensive line and linebacker group that has a ton of talent. And if you're not careful, you're going to find that it's very difficult to move the ball on the ground. That's where Riley Leonard comes into play, and really Mike Denbrock. And I think if you focus on Mike Denbrock for just a second, he has done a good job in the past of getting his team to play a very simplistic type of football. And you saw it at Cincinnati, you've seen it at LSU, and you've seen it at Notre Dame. He's very good at getting certain players involved. We saw it with Jordan Faison against Indiana. You've seen it with Trey Tucker at Cincinnati. You've seen a number of players step up because Mike Denbrock is that good of a play caller. I think that with the concerns you might have about Notre Dame's offense going against Georgia's defense, you feel pretty good that they have a good counterpunch to whatever Georgia's going to bring to the table. That goes with Riley Leonard. Finding ways to get him easy throws and get him involved in the run game. He's going to be involved in that. Jeremiah Love's going to be involved, obviously. But Riley Leonard's ability to balance this offense plays a huge role in how they win this game. If Riley Leonard can move the ball efficiently through the air, that's going to take one man out of the box, two men out of the box maybe, and that's going to force Georgia to play a more balanced approach, and that opens things up for the rest of the offense. Forcing turnovers is going to be a big key as well. One thing that we've seen before is Notre Dame is very good at taking the ball away. Xavier Watts has done a really good job of that. The rest of this defense is tied for first in terms of turnovers taken. Georgia struggles at times of taking care of the football. We saw that against Texas. We've seen that against Alabama. They are 71st in terms of turnovers lost. So if there's a way that Notre Dame can steal a possession or swing momentum in their favor, turning the ball over, which is what they're really good at, is going to be something they have to do. Battling in the trenches is going to be a big key too. Playing against an SEC team, even if this is an SEC team with some flaws, is going to start in the trenches. And I think when you started the year, Notre Dame had some big questions in the trenches on the offensive line. And I think as the year progressed, some injuries to Howard Cross, Riley Mills, you've seen some injuries maybe create some concerns. But one thing we've seen is that this is a resilient group. This is a group that is competing. They are, at the beginning of the year, they were kind of overlooked. We saw them struggle a little bit against Texas A&M, but also they bounced back and they were doing a really good job at the end. You lose to Northern Illinois the first half of that season. Again, that feels like a completely different season because you have not seen that in a while. They are very good in the trenches. Howard Cross just came back, but Notre Dame's offensive line versus Georgia's defensive line is probably the biggest matchup that I'm going to watch because that's a very talented Georgia defensive line and the linebackers that we talked about before, that's a group that can be a big problem if Notre Dame's not careful. But you feel like you have the guys up front for Notre Dame that can make them confident and move the ball efficiently. It's not just on Riley Leonard. Everything starts up front for the most part. And if Leonard has time to throw and if the rushing attack is making some movement, then you feel confident about where this team can go in terms of winning this football game. The players that we'll talk about here, we kind of talked about a couple of them already, but Jeremiah Love has been an absolute sensation for Notre Dame. You've seen the athleticism in the past few weeks. You've seen the production. Averaged 13.5 yards per carry against Indiana. An absolute monster performance from him when they needed it in a big stage. And you're hoping he can do that again. Running the football is going to be a big key, but also, like we talked about, giving different looks, finding ways to get guys like Jordan Faison open. Maybe you get a tight end out in the flats that Georgia can't account for. Mike Denbrock is a very good play caller, and I don't think he gets enough love for what he can do. Riley Leonard, we talked about him. He's always going to be the X factor for this team. How he plays determines how far Notre Dame goes. And this is a team that feels like they can win a national championship. Riley Leonard is going to be the big key for that. Jordan Faison has been a really fun player to watch when Notre Dame has found ways to get him open. And he is someone that I don't think you had him as your, slotted in as someone who's going to be a factor, and now you do. That gives you more options in the passing attack. You have some talented players. Some of those guys are going to have to step up. If it's him, if it's Jaden Greathouse, if it's someone else, who else is going to step up is going to be a big key. The defense is absolutely loaded. I don't think that most people know names outside of maybe Xavier Watts, but that's okay. Howard Cross is back. Jack Kaiser is a veteran linebacker that's very good at what he does. And then obviously Xavier Watts. Xavier Watts is going to be someone who could really help in that turnover battle with Gunnar Stockton going for Georgia. You feel like maybe you can sneak him in a position where Stockton doesn't see him. We'll see what happens there, but that's a way to get you some confidence, to get some momentum, is creating turnovers and seeing what you can do with maybe points off turnovers. And we've seen Notre Dame do a good job of that this year. So we'll see if they can continue that against one of the best teams in college football. Now, if you're Notre Dame, everybody's worried about what Georgia can do, but I think the biggest one you have to look at is Gunnar Stockton. And you feel, probably Notre Dame's fans feel very confident that it's Gunnar Stockton and not Carson Beck, who's now out for the year. You feel like you're in a good spot with a backup quarterback going against your defense, but Georgia is still extremely talented, and Notre Dame knows that. Marcus Freeman knows that. Al Golden knows that. And they've done a really good job of switching things up, providing different looks, and predicting what the other offense is going to do. I have a feeling they're going to do a similar thing with Georgia. Now, this is a group that is had its fair share of struggles in the Georgia Bulldogs this year. Turnovers have been a problem. Running the football has been a problem. But that being said, when they put it all together, they can be a very scary group. Nate Frazier is very good. Trevor Etienne's had his moments as well. Arian Smith is a game changer. That's one thing that without Benjamin Morrison, I'm curious how they're going to guard Arian Smith, because they don't want to let him get deep. They're probably more comfortable playing zone and let him go over the middle. And we've seen drops be a problem for him. So if he's just going over the middle, short to intermediate routes, then you feel confident that he's probably going to drop some, and you feel like you can get away with some of the coverages if you don't have the speed. But also, I know that Notre Dame has a ton of confidence in their guys, so maybe they do go man-to-man. Maybe Watts is lined up with coverage. Maybe they're bracketing him. We'll see what happens there. But there are other players to watch. Oscar Delp could be a problem. We'll see how they guard the tight ends. But again, you feel confident in what Notre Dame has done all year, especially when you saw what they did against Indiana. So we'll see what they can do against Georgia. The offense is going to have their hands full, plain and simple. No matter if they win this game or not, you have to credit Georgia with how much talent they have. Jalen Walker, Chaz Chambliss, Michael Williams, Nazir Stackhouse, those are guys that are going to be a major problem for the Georgia Bulldogs. CJ Allen's another one. There are plenty of guys that are going to be a problem. They have been productive for this team. They've been a big reason why they've been in games and also made it to the SEC championship. And they're a big reason why they won the SEC and now are a 2 seed in the college football playoff. They are going to be a problem. Notre Dame is going to have their hands full, but if you handle that, you feel pretty good about your chances to win this football game. Riley Leonard also has to be aware of what's going on in the secondary. Malachi Starks is a future NFL draft pick. He is someone that could be a big game changer for this team. And turnover is going to be a quick way to get Georgia confidence, especially with that backup quarterback. But if you're Notre Dame, you feel pretty good. You've gotten to this point because you've run the ball really efficiently. You play elite defense. The offensive line sets the tone. If you do all those same things, you feel pretty good about your chances to win this football game. Yes, it's the Georgia Bulldogs, and yes, it's Notre Dame, but this feels like a different team that has the ability to win this game and also has the ability to make a run at a national championship.